If you had watched the video last week, I mentioned I'd played a game where Jinxed Choker really went off. And it got me thinking about a deck built around using Jinxed Choker and similar effects to make a sort of hot potato game within a game. Turns out there aren't that many effects like it. You have Jinxed Choker, of course, and two other Jinxed artifacts, Jinxed Ring and Jinxed Idol. Maddening Hex and Crown of Doom can also be passed around with negative effects. And there were some one-off effects like Measure of Wickedness that were sacrificed when they had their effect. A common word on all these effects is, of course, target. So if you as a player have Hexproof or Shroud, then you take yourself out of the hot potato rotation, which is just the sort of tricky nonsense that made the deck idea really click for me. Will it be good? I don't know. But will it be entertaining? Now that seems more likely. My initial game plan was a Bruce Tarl Silas Wren Greenless Partner Commander deck, primarily for the colors, but I figured if any of our important artifacts did make their way into the graveyard, then Silas could potentially get them back. And Bruce granting double strike and lifelink to Silas makes him way less appealing to block because of the death touch. As a side note, I've been playing around with commanders that aren't integral in the game plan of the deck, but can come into play if needed. And this would have been an example of that, where ideally you wouldn't have to play Silas or Bruce. Another example is a Mimeoplasm Revered One deck I just built that ended up being sort of an evasive creature ninjutsu deck where the commander is there just in case some key pieces are in the graveyard. Then I could play it, and on the attack step it could be the whole package as an evasive creature to declare the attack and combat damage saboteur when dealing damage. The final build of this has a similar commander situation, bit of a spoiler there, so let's get back to it. With Silas and Bruce's colors, I had access to Zedru and Blim, two of the main legends that care about your opponents having your stuff, as well as John Irenicus Shattered One as another way to give your potentially detrimental effects to your opponents, like a goaded Indulgent Tormentor, which would have them target an opponent, not you, because ideally you have Hexproof, remember? Or Keen Duelist, which you can use for card advantage, but if you donate it to another player, they can't choose you, and two of your opponents are losing life, albeit at the cost of granting them card draw. But the more I tried to get everything to fit, the less focused the deck felt. Was it a group slug deck, a donate deck, an artifact matters deck? It was shaping up into a mishmash that didn't feel like it would be good at anything it was trying to do. I had also put in some effects that would allow me to potentially copy some of these various damage cards, and one kept jumping out at me. It was a legend that was on my radar because it was kind of odd, but ultimately could do what I wanted it to do if I trimmed the deck down to just caring about these jinxed cards. That was Thanos' Solemn Survivor. It can potentially recur creatures or artifacts from the graveyard as token copies, and make copies of artifact tokens that you control. So a bit of a safety net for the deck's strategy, and a way to make copies of the copies I was already planning on making. Losing red did mean that we lost some things like Havoc Festival, Maddening Hex, and Descent into Avernus, as well as both Zedru and Blim, and a lot of the other donate effects. But the core strategy required white for a majority of the hexproof effects, and blue for copy effects. And if I didn't end up playing the other negative donation pieces, then I don't think Zedru or Blim would have been used to their full capacity anyway, and they would be a bit win more or end up not doing much in the early game. I also didn't want to rely too much on creatures because I have a feeling that pods will not be happy about this particular game plan and opt for player removal. My usual playgroup is generally pretty suspicious about any deck I'm bringing to the table these days. And since combat damage isn't really something we care about with this deck, it's packing quite a few board wipes and skews to be a little more controlling. It was also good to keep in mind that opponents will control the things that we really care about staying on the board, so tailoring the board wipes around that was crucial. Austere Command gives you options and you could choose not to destroy artifacts. All is Dust will usually take out quite a bit but leave your Jinxed Chokers around, and Tragic Arrogance lets you choose Jinxed items as the artifact that your opponents keep, things like that. I also included Plague Reaver in the deck as a board wipe that can be passed around by your opponents. It fits the theme of the deck, and I've included ways of getting some cards back from the graveyard, so discarding may not be that much of a hindrance to give it away initially, and could even set up a Thanos activation of that second ability. You also want to be able to make copies of the Jinxed Choker even if you don't control it, so cards like Clever Impersonator or Realm Sketching that let you choose any artifact on the battlefield are a must. I'm also really excited to try Schema Thief. It seems perfect here since we can attack somebody with a Jinxed Choker and make a copy of it, or any other useful artifacts they may have. There are also a handful of counterspells, and that number may go up too, since you really need to avoid any sort of mass artifact destruction. There aren't as many artifact token creators as I would like at the moment to really reliably activate Thanos' second ability a lot. But since we are trying to make token copies of those Jinxed cards, that first ability is more important and reliable. I may also be a bit short on raw card advantage as well because I've put in a lot of ways to search for the Jinxed Choker or Ring. And I've decided with a heavy heart that the Jinxed Idol wasn't quite strong enough to justify it being in the deck. I could have added more tutors, but as it stands right now, there aren't any game changers in the deck, and I think that is probably ideal as I'm guessing this deck is going to be a bit lower on the power scale. I'm looking forward to actually playing it and then tweaking it, and I think it has a lot of potential to be a really fun and unique deck that asks your opponents to make some interesting decisions. And I can revisit it when I have more experience with it as well. The deck list is in the description or the comments, and if you have an interesting deck idea or end up building something along these lines, please share it in the comments. I'm always looking for more weird things to build around. And thanks for watching. Also, if you're in my usual pod, just forget you saw this video.